Alright guys, so in this video I'll be explaining to you my favorite setup. Now, what is my favorite setup? My favorite setup is, my favorite setup. It is a turtle soup or liquidity grab. Turtle soup or liquidity grab of equal highs, then hitting an order block or a breaker block, any institutional resistance area. On top of that, we have to make sure that the higher time frame trend or institutional order flow, which is basically the same thing but just in a more complicated term. So on top of that, we have to make sure that we are aligned with the higher time frame or IOF. So this is my favorite setup. So let me show you guys what exactly am I talking about. As we can see here, we can see that price is bearish. We can see that there are equal highs here. And this is supposed to be an order block. And I'll show you guys a live example. I'm just showing you guys a diagram of it right now. So we can see that equal highs were created, that we are bearish on the higher time frame. Price literally comes up, grabs the liquidity, grabs the equal highs, hits an order block, bearish order block. I prefer the 1 hour order block or 1 hour, 4 hour, or sometimes 15 minutes. So as we can see here, price came down, created an order block, created equal highs, price comes up, grabs the liquidity, or as ICT says, turtle soups, comes to this area. And especially if this is during London session, that'll be a very key time to sell. But however, during New York session, this can happen as well, and it's still going to be a good sell, but London session would be ideal. Now, let me show you guys live examples. Alright guys, so this is the first example. You probably might have seen this before somewhere in the course, but I remember taking this trade and it was so clean. Like I mentioned before, we are bearish on the higher time frame. As we can see, price is coming to the downwards. Price comes down. It creates these equal highs in here. Liquidity is being formed on top. Retail traders are placing their stop losses around this area to sell at these equal highs. What happens is price comes, takes out the liquidity, hits an order block, and this was during London session, and rejects cleanly. This is a prime example of one of my favorite setups. So my entry would have been at this order block right here. We can see that price rejected cleanly. It would have hit my 1 or 2 risk to reward, which I always use. The next setup that I took after this is not part of my favorite setup, but just to quickly explain. So during New York session is prime time for retracement or OTE. Price comes right back to my 15-minute order block and at an OTE 79% area. That was another clean trade setup I took. Now let me show you another live example. Alright guys, so example number 2, we are bearish as we can see. We can see this bearish retail trend line being formed. We know that above the highs on these trend line, there are retail stop losses, there are liquidity. However, looking at this certain area, we can see that price was respecting the trend line, respect. It came to this area. At this area, we can see that equal highs are being formed. On top of that, there is an order block right here. There is a 15-minute breaker block, as we can see right here, a clean 15-minute breaker block. Price comes, takes out the high, continues to the downside. We can see that equal highs are being formed in here. Retail traders are getting ready to place their stop losses above the highs because they have equal highs along with retail trend line. And what happens? Price comes up, grabs the equal high liquidity, grabs the retail trend line liquidity, comes up, respects the higher time frame bearishness, comes back to this bearish order block, and as we can see, price would have hit my 1 to 2 risk to reward. Let's see. So equal highs, price comes up, takes out liquidity, comes back to a bearish breaker block. Stop loss above the high, 30 pips-ish for 1 to 2. And an easy 1 to 2 is formed. So this is another great example of my favorite setup being shown. And also we can see that if you want to have a target area, we can see these equal lows as a target area. So let me show you guys one last example. Looking at is we do have this retracement back to this breaker block, as we can see right here. A breaker block on the higher time frame, the 4 hour. So price rejects off this 4 hour breaker block. It comes to our retracement level as well. As it rejects, we do have the bias now that we are bearish on the lower time frame. we see price continue to the downside. Eventually price retraces back to this order block. We see our very clean setup. We see the equal highs in here. If you go on a lower time frame, you can see it much more clear. You see these equal highs. We can put the liquidity on top. Price comes to our order block, grabs the equal highs, comes to our order block. At this area is where we would place our sells. Usually we would place it around the high or above the high, but the stop loss is pretty big. I like to have a little lower stop loss. And for 1 to 2, and as you can see, perfect. We hit our 1 to 2 entry. So this is one of my favorite setups. We have equal highs, come back to an order block. On the higher time frame, we are backed up. We are following the higher time frame trend or institutional order flow. And as you go through the weekly outlook videos, as you continue watching my weekly outlook videos, you'll see a lot of examples in where I find very clean setups. Alright guys, so in this video, I'll be going over one of my favorite type of setups, and I'll be showing you guys a trade that I entered using a bunch of confluences such as correlating pairs, higher time frame, institutional order flow, or market structure. So first off, we have to look on DXY to see what exactly is happening. And what we have seen on DXY is that we've been very bearish. So on the 4 hour, we see that what I saw was this 4 hour order block. On the 1 hour, we had very clean highs in here. We had liquidity being grabbed. Now at this moment, we might think that price is going to the upside to retrace, to come back to a retracement level. That's what I was expecting. Come back up somewhere up here, so then we would continue buying EU and GU and all the other pairs. But what ended up happening was that price came to the downside and took out these lows. So at that point, that's when I realized that, okay, maybe we are not going to go to the upside. Maybe this was just a liquidity grab and we are still going to be continuing to the downside, that we are very bearish. We have a very bearish momentum as we broke these lows. So my thought process was, okay, I'm bearish. I don't see price coming to the upside. There's no liquidity up here. Turtle soup was formed. So from this moment onwards, I placed my high, my low. We came to a retracement level. I was expecting price to retrace off this retracement level. On top of the retracement level, we have this grab of liquidity. And then we also have this 4 hour order block. So that's what I was watching, and from then onwards I knew that we were bearish. So if we are bearish on DXY, then on Euro USD, AUD USD, GBP USD, we are bullish. We are bullish on foreign pairs. So what we saw was price rejected off that level, consolidating a little bit, but price eventually rejected off this level. So that was just an analysis on DXY, why I'm bearish on DXY. So going to the trade setup I took, now that was on AUD USD. So AUD USD, going from the higher time frame, we see that we are bullish. So we should be buying, not selling. We have a bullish market structure. We always buy, we always stick with the institutional order flow or whatever the trend is. And what I noticed was that, okay, on a daily, nothing was too clean. On the 4 hour, what we had on the 4 hour was this order block, right? And not just that 4 hour order block, but on the 1 hour, what we saw was that we have a higher time frame 4 hour order block. We have on the 1 hour, we have this bullish breaker block. As we can see, price took out these lows and created a bullish breaker block. And then what I noticed was that, yeah, we could potentially reject off the 4 hour order block, but then what's the point of that? Because then our stop loss would be humongous. As we can see, 30 pip stop loss. Whereas if we go on a lower time frame, a time frame where we can find entry, a 1 hour or 15 minute, we can see this 1 hour order block within the 4 hour order block, within this breaker block. So at this moment, my analysis was I was waiting for price to come to this area. On the 1 hour, we came to entry. We came to our entry point. But now what exactly is happening on DXY? Because guys, we have to correlate pairs. We're not just trading off one pair. We're not just analyzing one pair and trading off that. So this was at 9 a.m. New York session, January 23rd. Going to DXY now. DXY, we have this 9 a.m. January 23rd. And I saw this 1 hour order block. And like I mentioned, guys, I was bearish on DXY as for the reasons mentioned previously. So on AU, we are at a support area. On DXY, we are at a resistance area. We also have on AU, we have these lows or these equal lows. And here, as you can see, liquidity was being formed. This is a New York session kill zone time. We have a bunch of confluences. It could be a potential power of 3 setup as well. We see price consolidate, come to the downside, come to the 1 hour order block. And it was at this moment that, okay, we have a bunch of confluences from higher time frame to correlating pairs, to kill zone, to power of 3, to liquidity grab, which this is my favorite setup, by the way, liquidity grab, to an order block. So I placed my stop loss below this 1 hour order block. Entry at there for 1 to 2. And what ended up happening was we did end up perfectly hitting TP within one candle. So within one candle, so you guys can see how clean this trade setup was. And this is just an example of how exactly I trade. And as we can see here, another 1 hour order block. Now we continue to the downside, and we'll see the same with AU, potentially continuing to the upside off this 1 hour order block. Or if we go on the 15-minute, we can see a 15-minute order block with a grab of liquidity. So, and then we could see potential to the upside. So guys, this is how I trade. This is one example of how I trade. I took this trade setup. So now the question is, why didn't I trade EU or GU or the other pairs? Well, so we know that was at 9, right? It was at around 9:30 a.m. So on 9:30 on EU, what do we have on EU? EU is just a mess. What exactly is this? We don't see nothing clean on EU. Whereas if you look at AU, look how clean it is. It's actually trending. It's actually going to the upside. EU is just consolidating. And on the 1 hour, 4 hour, what do we see? I guess this order block, but it never came to it. On the 1 hour, we could see this breaker block formation in here. And price did reject off that breaker block. But on AU, it was just much cleaner because we had a power of 3. We had equal lows being taken. Whereas on EU, we don't really see much. We don't really see anything under here. We also have this stop loss, which was pretty big, 30 pip stop loss for 1 to 2. So yeah, I would have taken this potentially if AU wasn't present. But AU was a much cleaner trade, so that's why I stuck with AU. I don't want to trade AU and EU because at that point, if AU hits stop loss, that means EU will hit stop loss because they both move the same. So it's not really a different trade idea. It's basically the same trade idea. So for example, so for me to risk that much on 2 trades, which if one hits, the other will hit, and if one hits stop loss, the other will hit stop loss, there's no point of that. So I just picked a better trade on GU. What do we have on GU? So GU, I did not take that either, but I'm looking at this 1 hour order block for London session or whatever session's up next. On GU, what do we see? On the 4 hour, not really much, not really a clean order block. There's not much volume, or this order block is not big enough. 1 hour, we could see this type of we could see this consolidation, I guess, but as you can see with GU, it wasn't really clean as well. We did have some equal lows, but if there was some nice order block within here, then GU would have been a nice buy as well. So that's why I chose AU out of EU, GU. This one just looked the cleanest, and this one just looked the cleanest. So for any of you guys who are curious on why I chose AU over all the other pairs, this is the exact reason. So thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next.